Hello, I'm Mary Spicer, and thank you for joining me for today's episode of Behind Fashion. In this unprecedented time, the fashion industry, like so many industries, is in distress. I created this series so that we could work together and support each other as we move forward in this new fashion world. Over the next few weeks, I will introduce you to many people behind the scenes: directors, designers, producers, and casting agents. With a virus that discourages the interaction of people and the touching of clothing, what does the future hold for the fashion industry, and how are our roles changing? I look forward to collaborating and sharing our ideas and journeys as we move forward in this new world. Today, it is my great pleasure to introduce all of you to David Milosevich, casting director. David Milosevich attended Kent State University in Ohio for advertising. Upon graduation, David went to Manhattan and worked for about a year at Legends very briefly. Hi, David. I'm glad you're here.
Hey there, how are you?
and really so glad, because I'd like to talk a little bit more about your background. You were at Legends for about a year. You left, you were there in 1983 and you left to work for Click in 1984. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And you were at Click for about 5 years.
Yeah, right, till 89, right, yep.
Yeah. And then after that, and can I just talk about, wow, what a different world, 83, 84, 89, I mean, than it is today. And then you went to work.
Cell phones, no computers, no fax machines even in the beginning. It was telexing. Yeah, it was very different, correct.
Wow, I wish we had cameras for that. But after that, you went to Next as a model manager.
Correct.
Okay. And then eventually there at Next, you became the VP of the women's division.
Yes, right.
Wow. And you were there for how long?
Next opened in 89. They had been open for 2 weeks and I left in 2004. So yeah, 14 years, no, 2003. So 14 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
2 weeks they'd been open and you got right in there. That's amazing.
Yeah, right from the ground up. Yep.
And from there you went out on your own and started Milo Casting.
Yeah, David Milo Casting, right.
David Milo Casting, correct. Yes. Okay, so I'm actually still doing your bio, but I had to discuss these positions in more detail because, you know, there's a lot involved to them. We're gonna get in a little bit further, but with your company, David Milo Casting now, street casting is a big part of your company's repertoire, which I love. Can you quickly tell me what street casting is? What does that mean?
So you could call it street or real people casting. It's kind of, you know, both. But I mean, sometimes it is exactly as it says. It's you get out on the street and you walk the streets. I mean, you have sort of a breakdown of what a client might be looking for. And you start walking the streets of New York City, because that's where we are, trying to find people to fulfill certain roles. And you're kind of approaching strangers that you feel might be good candidates to present to the client and, you know, explain what it's all about. And I mean, the thing about New York is it's New York. So there's such a great diversity of people just walking the street, number one, because it's a city that you do walk in. And, you know, people are more open to it. I don't know, you know, if I was out in Ames, Iowa, or a smaller town where people weren't as accustomed to these sorts of things, what the reaction would be. But you know, people usually, you can get them in and they listen and you talk and explain. It's great. It's fun.
And that way you can find people that truly match the client, what they're looking for, because many times it's a lifestyle or something that you're looking for. I'm going to continue with your bio. You've cast models for ad campaigns like Adidas, Banana Republic, Chapstick, Diane von Furstenberg, and you've done a few of hers. I know you did the holiday, but this is a photo of Carly Kloss, and I think that was it Be Yourself, Be You, Be Yourself?
I can't remember really. That was a few years ago. I really don't. Yeah, the production team are the ones that hired me to do the casting for that. Yeah.
That's really wonderful. You also worked with Express several times. One of your shoots was with Natasha Poly, and here's a photo of her for Express.
Yep.
Just fantastic. Anybody listening on a podcast or watching, if you want to see videos, we're going to go into that a little bit more. These are a couple photos, and you can find those anywhere, of Carly Kloss for Diane von Furstenberg. But as we go along, I'll let you know what videos are on the YouTube channel for you to watch. You've also worked with Express Men, La Mer, Lucky Brand, Maybelline, Nuuly, Re-Ink, Target Cat and Jack launch, Tommy Hilfiger, and Whole Foods. You've also casted for designer fashion shows such as Beau Sedan, DeVoe New York, John Elliott, Monique Lullier, Pas de Calais, Perry Ellis, Steve Aoki Dimmock, and we've talked about this quite a bit. We do have a video on the YouTube of this, and he did a show in New York, but not in a venue. He was out on a street, wasn't he?
The show was out on the street. It was in the summer. I can't remember. I think it was like 2017, and it was on Broadway and 4th Street. And he brought in this group of young percussionists. I think they all played primarily percussion instruments, and they was sort of like marching down the runway, and then the models came. It was a lot of fun.
Wow.
A lot of fun.
There were a lot of people there because and a couple thousand probably.
I mean, it was crowded. It was packed. It's hard. I mean, when you're outside, it's hard to know how many people specifically. But it was a lot of fun. It was a great show.
I think he followed it.
The models were wonderful. The models were wonderful in game. It was a really fun show.
I love that. And then you've also cast for Tadashi Shoji, Tao Rei Wong, and I've put up a video of a couple of those shows as well. People have to understand that this is some of these are several years with these companies, various campaigns and fashion shows. You've also cast for fashion school shows like Pratt Institute, and you've cast for magazines such as The Culture Crush, Elle Germany, Glamour, GQ, Harper's Bazaar, The Knot, Lucky, Marie Claire Italia, New York Magazine, Stella Magazine, which I think was the Telegraph. Is that correct, David?
Yeah, I think when I did it was called the London Telegraph or something, London Daily Telegraph. Yeah.
Vogue Arabia, Vogue Hong Kong, Vogue Taiwan, and I did not keep listening because we have a lot to talk about. You are so very interesting.
On and on and on.
We really could.
Yeah.
Behind fashion, I appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Even now, you're still busy and not, incredibly busy, but you are busy, and I do appreciate you taking the time. And I'd like to cheers you to your opening your business years ago, but still, and all of your successes. Thanks, David.
Virtual, right? There we go. Little plug for Mary behind fashion. There you go.
Oh, and really, it's just a break for water too for all of us, because we're gonna get cooking along here. Now, going back to your job with Click in 1984, can you please explain to me what a model agent does?
Right. So, they assume a lot of different roles, but ultimately they become the one that are, in many ways, the guiding force behind launching a career for a model. If you're, dealing with newer talent and development, oftentimes you have to really work on developing their portfolio by getting a lot of test photographs up, getting the models presentable too, and a little bit more of a broader understanding of how the business works, how to present yourself when you meet various clients, and then putting them out in front of the clients, whether it be through go-sees with photographers who could open doors for them, magazines who could begin to hire them, and of course, create an awareness of them, and then, commercial and money clients who can help sustain them too. So you really guide them along those pathways. And then as the career continues to develop, depending on where it goes and depending on the mindset of the model, you kind of start to make decisions about what jobs seem correct for them and allow them to perpetuate and further their career, or some jobs maybe on occasion you just have to say no to. It could be not the right job at that time for them, and you become that ear piece that they can talk to and share with, and you know, you try to cultivate and develop relationships, you know. I mean, they're business relationships, but there's a personal side to those relationships as well, because they need to feel connected. And they need to know that you're there behind them and trusting and looking out for their best interests on many, many levels. So
Right. And that takes a
lot of different, you know, hands.
yeah. And it takes a lot of people skills on your part to understand. Maybe sometimes they tend to be young sometimes, and you need to see if there's something going on, and then a tactful way to find out what's happening. How can I help you? You know, if they're feeling frustrated or what have you with the business, which can happen.
Yeah.
Keep the
And you
spirit.
need, I mean, it's very much, you have to have a very open line of communication with them, and be, you know, they have to be able to talk to you and share with you, and you know, the better we are communicating with one another as an agent to model, the more successful our relationship will be.
Right. And
Yeah.
some model managers do quite a lot with their models. If this is maybe, let's say, a high profile model, maybe they go to the photo shoots. Is that what they're doing now? And did they
I
do
think
that
that
back
start
then?
more, yeah, when I left, that was just, I mean, beginning to become a little bit more prevalent. Like, I know that we would travel to, we would go during the shows. We would often go to the shows and be there backstage with them, hanging out, and sometimes even traveling to Europe, depending on the, you know, the model. I find now, yeah, more and more agents will even come to the shoots and the sets and remain there, maybe as a buffer or a protector sometimes for the model to the client. You know, I think this is more prevalent now than it was when I
So
was
they're very involved.
100%.
Wow. And so when I say a high profile model, I think that's different from, let's say, maybe 89, 90. Is that when we still had the supermodels? Um,
Well, that term is still used to identify certain models. I don't know, you know, I think it might be even a little overused, but, you know, high profile could be a fair, you know, a fair way to describe, yes.
yeah, sometimes they're it girls or very large on social media or what have you. Do you think that this is going to be something that will no longer happen? Maybe they're going to curb some of that as people try to slim down on budget or trying to make things. Do you think everybody's going to try to make it a little more eco-friendly where they're traveling less as managers, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all from what I, you know, speaking to agents right now, it's kind of like a story that's unfolding. I know that there are a lot of girls that are currently in Europe that are not able to come back into the country at the moment. Um, but the ones that are here are starting to work again. I do think the productions for photo shoots are being tailored towards addressing COVID. So they're much tighter and leaner productions with less people for sure. Um,
Hmm.
I wonder, you know, I mean, there are those that are still willing to travel and do travel. So I don't know. It's hard to know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I think if you're, like you said, that high profile model, they're going to travel. They're going to be wanted at the various.
Well, then, but then that's up to the model if they feel comfortable, you know, doing it. I mean, some may say I'm okay to get on a plane and do it, and some may say right now I just don't feel comfortable. So again, it's a very individual thing, you know.
Yeah. You know, in 2007, 2008, the discussion started in Italy that the models were becoming too thin and unhealthy. The CFDA also came in and agreed, and they put in some of what they said were suggested standards, you know, no models under 16, how to identify eating disorders, anorexia, nervosa, things like that, and promote healthy eating habits. Did you pay attention to those things in the 80s, or is that just something that's more recent?
No, I think so. Going from an agent even into a casting director, it existed in the 80s as well as the 90s. Some of it became more prevalent. Um, I feel that from where I can only speak from where I sat as an agent and the people I worked with. I think there was always a real genuine concern if we saw somebody really becoming noticeably too thin and perhaps having problems, you know. So we would always try to speak to them and address things, you know. Um, it was a And also when I started in the very beginning, I mean, really in the early 80s, girls were like it was a size 6'8", but more 6. And then it was like 4'6", the standard. And then it was like 2 4s, that it just kept going smaller and smaller. And also I think there was a lot of interest in very young girls. And that was also a big issue, which is now kind of really stopped. And there's been, feet down to that too. Girls that are 14 and 15 have different bodies than girls that are 19, 20, 21. And sometimes a girl at 14 or 15 has a particular body that for whatever reasons was fitting the clothes so perfectly and the stylists were so happy and those girls were working a lot. And then as they got a little older and they became the body of a typical woman, or even then some of those girls are, superpowers or whatever with their bodies. But if they got hips and curved out a little and suddenly things weren't fitting and, it just was that weird thing. But a lot of that was driven by, more so by stylists and the magazine world, the top tier kind of power players. I always said the agencies were really just suppliers of talent, and we were trying to meet the demands that were requested of us. And so if we didn't have that girl or that, that was fitting and the feedback we were getting, we were trying to find that girl that would be right and would fit with those clients were demanding during those times.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they're asking for it. And then I think sometimes maybe saying something to the models, then they start internalizing and they start eating less. I know just during Fashion Week, and I'm just going to say this on the side, is that the girls are going all day. People need to understand they're running from place to place to place. I'm always putting out candy or bars or water because they think that these couple things are going to be okay. And then all of a sudden they're waiting for go-see for, 3 hours and they've run out of food. So I think just the stress and the go-go-go-ness of previously Fashion Week, definitely the girls that were already thin got almost painfully thin just within a couple days. So there's a lot more awareness of that and just saying to them, I think you're stressed. I think you need to eat a little bit more.
And I think clients' attitudes and perceptions have started to change somewhat. I mean, there's, I'm not sure that everyone, is quite as aware, but I think there's definitely, and thanks to the CFDA, a much more committed and stronger awareness to, recognizing these things. Because, it's just not right. It's not good. It's not right. It's not healthy. So, yeah.
And the audience is asking for more sizes, people that look like us, that kind of thing. We don't necessarily need such the tall, thin model as in the past. Now, in 1989, you moved from Click to Next, and you started off as a model manager there, but then you eventually became the VP of the women's division. Mm-hmm. And what was your role there? What does that mean? What are you doing?
I just think, as a VP, you probably are getting more and more involved in the big, broader picture, the scope of long-term, what we're going to do, how this is going to, how this is going to evolve, what we hope to see, bigger picture. I mean, I'm still dealing with various individual models and talent as well, but also, involved on a broader scale.
So you are sending out maybe casting agents or suggesting things or?
Yeah, but I still did like a lot of the day-to-day things that an agent would do, but I was also involved in conversations with the owners about the broader scope of the agency as a whole and what we were doing and where it was going and just reporting back about more things than they were broader and maybe rather than just one little this girl that girl this, it was the big picture.
Now when you started at Next, like you said, it was just a couple weeks in. Mm-hmm. How did it grow over your
so right. So when I first started, we probably had like about 12 to 15 working models. And, they were all, kept pretty busy. And I remember one day looking at the owner of Next, maybe like 10 years, it was probably like 10 years later. Yeah, ish. And suddenly going, wow, like, because I recognized we had office, suddenly this one office in New York became an office in Miami, an office in LA, an office in Toronto, obviously the New York office, Paris, Milan, they did not open until much later, but we had an office in London. And it's like, wow, when did that happen? You know, it's like, because when you're just living it day in, day out, you know, you don't, it doesn't, you know, the changes that happen, they happen. But when you sort of step back and look at the whole picture, it's like, whoa, you know, pretty crazy.
Yeah.
We
And you're
that.
part of that also, though. Not only are you doing the things that you're talking about, that's why I'm trying to get a little perspective, because really you were also helping as the offices opened, and here's what we kind of do, and here's what you want to look for, and that kind of thing. There was a lot.
There were great listen, there were great teams already in place, and thanks to the owners of the company for those offices that you know, they made sure that the people that were there already kind of knew and knew what it was all about and what it needed to be and how to make it happen, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. So after 14 years, why did you suddenly decide to open your own company?
Sure. So what I started to see happen in like the last couple of years that I was there was this kind of, there had always been a few casting directors, a few, maybe a handful. And always great relationships, but I saw this kind of continued growth of the casting director. And the casting part was one of the things I loved to kind of do as an agent, you know, talking to the clients and brainstorming, like, this is what we're looking for. And then thinking who could be right for this campaign or that job or this magazine shoot. And I felt like as these casting directors came into play more and more, they became like the middleman between the agent and the client. So there was like this sort of step, you know, between us, and we weren't as involved in actually really casting. We were just kind of presenting our talent to the casting director, who was then really sort of starting to make those decisions as to who they would really like to present to their client. And you know, it was a little frustrating. I thought, geez, that's what speaks to me. So at that point, I thought, you know, maybe that it's time to go with a leap of faith and do it, you know, start doing casting.
And that makes sense, as earlier we were talking about how you enjoy the street casting and getting to know the people, and you're a very people person. And I mentioned it, we had spoken before this interview a couple days ago, and I talked about a moment where I said, you're just such a very kind casting agent. And you said, we don't need to talk about that. That's not important, but it is very important. And I won't go into the whole story, but you are a very kind casting agent. You're patient, and all of the models, I think they're very reciprocal. I think they go above and beyond, and they're just always so very nice. And it really is, it's a good thing to see. Not everyone is so kind, and I think they should be, because it does reciprocate that.
Yeah. Well, maybe that comes too from my years being an agent. You know, I have a sort of a deeper understanding, you know, of them as people, you know,
Yeah.
and I like them. Yeah.
And it really reaches them, and you definitely you've got some great models that you always bring, and it's always a good fit. So has the process of casting changed since you started your company? Are you changing that within your own business?
Yeah, it has changed. I mean, you know, it's just getting more and more with technology. You know, we're relying more and more on technology for the casting process. So I found in the last couple of years, especially, oftentimes clients are more interested in an electronic casting. So send me the portfolios. You know, you have to have a site up where you can send them everything at once. And then they want to know, they love to see Instagram accounts. You know, they want to know their social media following. They want to see what they're posting on Instagram. So between social media and just general technology, yes, it has changed. I mean, you know, sometimes they don't need to meet that model on a proper go-see like they used to, you know? I mean, you can do video now with your phone and send it off to them and they can see, but so it has changed for sure.
Which is good. It was going that way with the pandemic, because it is definitely that way now. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But when you say, and we talked about this earlier, the models have these social media presences. Are agents and clients looking at how many people those models are reaching? Is that part of their decision?
Clients, yes. I find, for sure, many times. Agents, I think it can, I don't think it's exclusively what they're looking for, but I think it could sway them. I think if there's a model that they maybe were on the fence about, but they had a really big following, it could influence them, you know, in a way. I
Sure.
mean, I had a conversation with an agent like a couple years ago, and he said, you know, it's really sad to him because, and he comes from you know, a time when there wasn't all social media. He said, but you know, you have these beautiful, beautiful girls who show so much potential to really be models, you know, like that model like Christy used to be, or Naomi or Linda, those supermodel girls, you know. And he said, you know, they might have like 2,000 or 3,000 followers, and he feels like, he said, I feel like they're never going to have that career just because of that.
Right. That is unfortunate. And so it sounds like they're using the models, especially as maybe a smaller company, but also they're bringing them in as a little bit of marketing.
Well, they've always been brought in as marketing, ultimately. I mean, just in addition, you know, it's just now it's even more, you know, more so because of, you know, because of the world of technology and social media. Yeah.
And knowing that, how have the models changed over the years? Do you find that there's more diversity and inclusivity from like your days at Click to now,
I mean,
or?
we know that and there has to be, of course, and that's been written about, you know, extensively pretty recently. I mean, there's always room to make it grow more and more, but yeah, I mean, the whole thing of the range of body types has become more inclusive. You know, you see it on the runways, which is a great thing. And you see it in magazines, and you know, there's girls that are really very, very successful. So absolutely. And I mean, when I was an agent, I remember like with Asians, you know, you might have like 3 to 5 really that were in New York at any one time, you know. And now, of course, there's many, many more, and also with, you know, Black and brown women, you know, and Indian, and I think and the Latina, as it should be, because the world is changing, and those people should have been recognized 25 years ago, you know, 30 years ago. So thank God, you know, I think it's a great thing because to me, you know, beauty comes in all shapes, sizes, and colors.
Correct. And it's really nice to see those changes. As a matter of fact, I feel like I almost notice if there isn't a lot of diversity, it stands out quite a bit now. As a little bit tone deaf, or
Yeah,
just a
perhaps.
little bit old or dated. You've had 2 castings last week.
Yeah.
How has the casting scenario changed during this pandemic?
Well, it's sort of like you said earlier, kind of leading up to, you know, this whole idea of electronic and remote casting was already kind of in place, the technology. But I find that, you know, now more than ever, you know, that's kind of going to be the nature of things. That's what I found with like two very different types of castings. One was a very big commercial casting that we went across the country. So, you know, I had to get like video clips, and you know, the client was good in that they sent something very specific as to what they needed, and I was able to get them, present them, and now that's going to start happening. The shoot's happening like this week and next week. The other one was more of a fashion, you know, New York fashion model kind of thing. So the initial casting was electronic through portfolios and that sort of thing with digital images. And then we did do a very small request only casting where I had COVID-19, you know, we were following all the rules for COVID with distancing, masks, and I had specific times for each girl, which, you know, normally you might say come between, you know, in a half-hour increment, you might have, you know, 25 or 30 girls come in all at once and they wait their turn. Whereas this time I had, you know, I knew I had this many girls over the course of an 8-hour day, and they came in 10-minute increments within an hour. And when they came in, you know, they were able to take off their masks. I didn't need to see portfolios or anything like that because I had seen them all online anyhow. And I didn't need composites. And we did the pictures and the video. And, you know, we had social distancing. So, you know, that's the kind of stuff, like normally you see the models, they come in, you know them, you might give them a hug or a kiss or shake their hand, or, you know, now it's all very like, hi, how are you? You know, virtual hug. But, you know, you have to maintain your distance and everything. So it's
And
very different, and it's going to continue to be different for quite a while, I think, until this all gets resolved and people feel comfortable. And it's going to affect a lot of bigger commercial castings. That there are castings that I've done where I've seen anywhere from 150 to 250 people in a day. And at that point, you simply cannot assign a specific time. You have to give windows of time, but sometimes you can have 10 to 12 people waiting at any one time. So that's going to change. It's going to have to.
What is the reaction with the casting through the video? Is that working? Are people responsive to that?
Yeah, I think they get it. They understand, because they probably, the talent that you're reaching out to, I don't think they want to put themselves in a susceptible position either, so they're happy to do that kind of a casting. And I think we talked about this. I was speaking to this one client last week, and I said, it's interesting because when you do a live casting and you bring the models in, it's much more uniform, because as the casting director, you're controlling the casting, what you need them to do, what they should say, blah, blah, blah. You have your seamless white background. And now when they're doing it on their own, you actually get a better sense in a way of who they are and their personality, because it's, they're kind of producing it, so to speak. And even if it's like a 4 to 6 second clip, you just get the vibe of who they are. And it's a little more raw sometimes, but I think it's kind of cool, actually.
And that might change. Yeah. And that might change the type of models that are being chosen as well. It's just it's a whole different thing than being, some people do really well. I would say, like, whether you're a comedian or something, in front of the audience, they do, and other people are okay with not being in front of the audience. And that is just the way that things are changing right now.
Yeah.
And the fashion shows or presentations very well are probably not in front of people also.
Yeah, not in New York, not in September for the most part, right?
No, sir. Well, I thank you so much, David, for coming on and taking the time to speak with me and everyone. I truly appreciate it. Like I told everyone, I put some videos, I'll add some more onto my YouTube channel, and people can go and check out some of the things that you've done, but there's so many, it's too many to list.
Good. Well, thank you for having me, Mary. I appreciate it. Cheers to you. Stay well.
Just take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. And thank you all for attending this week's Behind Fashion series with my guest, David Milosevich. You can find him on Instagram at David Milo Casting, DAVIDMILO Casting. His website is www.davidmilocasting.com. I will not have Behind Fashion for the next 2 weeks, as I am in New York for a virtual fashion show. Please join me Wednesday, September 16th, when I go Behind Fashion with the CEO of LDJ Productions, Lori DeJong. See you all Wednesday, September 16th at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, noon on the East Coast, 9 a.m. on the West Coast, and 5 p.m. British Summer Time. All the best to you and yours.